Hello my friends, welcome to Canadian Immigration Channel, and this is our regular webinar, a regular masterclass, and today we're talking about provincial nominee programs. Based on the feedback from the previous webinar, many of you were asking us to elaborate on how provincial programs are working, what it is all about, and essentially how to deal with provincial programs, understanding their correlation and coexistence with express entry, how Quebec is standing, where it's standing, and so on. So practically today we will be talking about those provincial programs, we will be talking about those streams, and we'll see how to dig deeper and understand them and increase your chances for immigration to Canada. Now, the plan for today's masterclass would look the following way. We will talk about the basic principles of provincial and territorial immigration to Canada, about principles of federal immigration to Canada. We will, of course, talk about Quebec and why it stands differently. Many of you were asking us why we have so few videos about Quebec and what makes Quebec standing aside from other provincial nominee programs, so we will of course touch the base upon it. We will talk about connection with the province as a key and how to establish this connection so that, for the future you will be able to convince the province that I am the right person to move forward, I am the right guy or gal who should be immigrating to the province, and I deserve this provincial support. We will also talk about limitations about applying for multiple provincial programs, expressing your interest for several provincial programs, and so on. And of course we would talk about overseas sessions, we would talk about online sessions, which are playing more and more active role during COVID-19, how to deal with them, what to do right now, literally today, if you're looking to increase your chances. And of course, we would leave some time for your questions and answers so that we would be able to elaborate and address your concerns, answer your questions on visas and immigration to Canada, because at the end of the day, as usual, this event is specifically dedicated to you. So the purpose of all this conversation here is to make sure that you get these ideas, you educate yourself on how you could increase your chances for immigration to Canada. And I sincerely appreciate so many of you coming, watching, asking questions, and so many of you staying late at night, early in the morning, whatever time it is in your time zone, so that you're able to listen to this live event. Thank you so much in advance, and let's go. Now, speaking about program types and types of immigration to Canada, let me just do one thing very quickly in here, so that just to make sure that I would from time to time have a sort of a sneak peek to your chat, and if necessary would try to address your question while we're in the presentation. Typically what we would do is focus on slides and slides only while we're talking, and then, as I said, at the end of the day, at the end of this formal part of live event, we will have this dedicated, deliberate portion of it where we could address your questions and concerns directly. But if there are questions which are directly related to the slide on the screen, I will try to read them and probably try to answer those questions immediately. Can't promise 100%, but I will try my best. Now, speaking about the theory, the generic theory which applies here and which builds the foundation of this understanding. So what we have is we have two absolutely different pillars of immigration. First one, federal immigration program, right? Or federal immigration programs rather, they allow you to immigrate to any province of Canada except for Quebec, and we will talk about Quebec a bit later on today, right? But literally you could go anywhere in Canada you want to, and you could settle yourself anywhere you wish to, right? Provincial immigration at the same time targets, of course, provinces, right? And it aims to attract people who would successfully, potentially, of course, contribute to economical and cultural development of provinces. So provinces are looking to make sure that they would bring people who will help provinces to grow. So these provincial programs, they are, of course, directed, they are managed by provincial authorities who know what's best for the provinces, right? As to sort of wrap it up, right? Federal authorities don't really care where exactly you're going. What they're looking for is to make sure that you comply with the requirements, and if everything goes fine, welcome. When it comes down to provincial authorities, right, they want to make sure that what you do, how your profile is presented, it corresponds to the needs of the province, right? As a province, I want to be sure on a balance of probabilities, of course, that you would come to the province and you would try to settle here. Now, speaking about provincial immigration programs, how it works, right? And in a nutshell, to illustrate you a pathway, how it works out for provincial programs, the typical way to do this would be first applying for a provincial nominee program. When we're talking about PNP, I hear this more often than not, like, apply me for PNP. Let's go for PNP. So PNP, this abbreviation for provincial nominee program, incorporates multiple programs. In fact, every province has a number of those immigration streams, and it could be 10, 20, 30 of them, right? As many as you could imagine. There are sub-streams and so on. So speaking about PNPs, there are many of them, right? It's multiple programs. They incorporate different solutions. They target different people to come in. So when we're talking about PNP, you got to understand which one specifically I'm targeting to, all right? So even saying Saskatchewan provincial nominee program, there are different provincial programs in Saskatchewan. There are different provincial programs in Ontario. We got to understand which one we're going to, right? So the first step is to, of course, apply for provincial nominee program. Submit your documents, right? Make sure that everything is done properly. And we're talking here about literally every single province on our map. Now, next thing is receiving a provincial certificate of nomination. This provincial certificate of nomination essentially is a letter, a paper, if you will, an email, right? It's a grant for you stating that province wants you. Now, this is not immigration by itself. It's, of course, a very, very solid foundation of it, but it's not enough. Now, what happens afterwards? Your application for permanent residence. Because at the end of the day, right, provincial authorities, all they could technically say is that we want this guy or we want this girl, right? We want these applicants to come to our province. We nominate them, which is not, of course, sufficiently enough, because next step for us would be making an application for federal immigration, right? Application for permanent residency, where federal officers would decide whether or not to grant you this immigrant visa and whether or not to allow you to come to Canada. So don't forget this. I just wanted to step here for 1 second. Now, when it comes down to the story where a province has nominated you, it does not necessarily mean that federal authorities would approve you, right? That's just have a sort of a grim example. An applicant comes to me, right, saying, hey, I applied by myself. I've been nominated by Manitoba. I'm looking to be a nurse. I don't want to mention from which country, but whatever, right? I got IELTS 6.0. Now, Manitoba gave me the certificate of nomination. I'm going for federal authorities, and federal authorities are telling me that, look, you got 90 days to present a new IELTS test certificate stating that you got 7.5. Otherwise, we will not allow you to immigrate and your application will be refused. Reason being, well, because we believe that in order for you to work as a nurse in Manitoba, despite the fact that Manitoba has supported you, you have to have better IELTS test results. Luckily, we managed to do it sort of on the middle ground. The client has retaken her IELTS. She scored 6.5 to 7, right? We've managed to prove that this is typically enough, because at that time it was the requirement of the Nursing Association in Manitoba. But here's a good example of a story where practically federal authorities could reject you at any second, despite the fact that you were nominated by the province. It doesn't happen that often, though, but just for your understanding where it stands and how you got to be careful at every step, right? I know way too many people who are saying, hey, I've just got myself nomination from Saskatchewan, from New Brunswick, you name it, right? Got to be very careful with this. Now, and of course, finalization of your process is essentially coming to Canada, becoming a permanent resident of Canada, and making sure that you would reach the province of your destination. It's not as easy as it comes down to the point where you immigrated through one of the federal programs, simply because immigration in this sense implies that you have to reach the province, right? So you might have your tickets for Toronto, you land yourself in Pearson International Airport, but you still got to demonstrate to CBSA officers at your port of entry how you will be reaching your province of destination. Even if you decide to, step out in Toronto, quarantine yourself for 14 days, you still got to make sure that you get this clear pathway for the province of your destination. Once you reach it, right, that's where your legal obligations are met. Now, going forward from here, speaking about Quebec, how Quebec is different. Well, of course, it's different in a stance that it's the only 100% French-speaking province in Canada, and Quebec has an absolutely separate agreement with federal authorities, right? Quebec says that, like, if you're seeking to immigrate to us, you got to be sure that you immigrate to Quebec only, and you do not express your interest. You do not apply for immigration to other provinces or territories of Canada. You do not create your self-express entry profile. Now, this is a very interesting note for those of you who are coming to me and telling me, look, by the way, we have created an expression of interest here, 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 and here. And yeah, by the way, you know what? We've just created an expression of interest in ARIMA in Quebec. Now, in reality, probably nobody's going to actually punish you for it, right? And nobody's probably gonna just chase you for the fact that you have created your expression of interest in Quebec's ARIMA. But if they find out about it, right, you stand a chance of having your application refused because, look, you were trying to immigrate to one province, to another province. You were trying to violate that agreement between Quebec and federal authorities. So in this sense, right, Quebec has their own special requirements, and these special requirements, they're completely different from the ones imposed by federal authorities. They have nothing to do with express entry. Application is done differently, and once Quebec approves your application, right, it then goes to federal authorities for finalization. So applicants who immigrate through Quebec cannot create express entry profile. They are they're not allowed to create their applications for any other provincial programs. You got to make sure that you are absolutely adamant of going to Quebec. In one of our previous videos, we spoke before and discussed the matter when, say, you know French, you speak French, it might be your first language. Quebec might not still be the best province of your destination, considering processing times, considering the way how their program is structured. It might be a better option to look at provinces such as Ontario, Manitoba, New Brunswick, but that's a different story, right? If needed, we would repeat it or discuss it in a tete-a-tete consultation, if you will. But all in all, I believe that Quebec right now, their system right now, is not as flexible as express entry plus provincial programs expression of interest. Moreover, I honestly believe that the history of Quebec retroactively canceling multiple applications of those who are investors, of skilled migrants, right, proves that, you know, Quebec is not that per se trustworthy when it comes down to immigration to Canada. So I would rather look at other provinces, even if French is your first language. But, well, nothing's wrong with Quebec, just, you know, sharing my personal opinion here. Now, moving forward with provincial programs and how these provincial programs are working, right? What kind of nominations they are considering. There are chunks of them, and we try to group them in sort of, you know, 4 separate categories, right? There are provinces which allow you to immigrate having points or having invitation from close friends, right? Or relatives. For example, Manitoba would allow you to get additional points, and the fact that you could create your expression of interest in Manitoba just based on the story on the foundation that you have close friends or you have relatives in Manitoba. There are provinces which are taking priority occupations, and they're saying, like, for example, Nova Scotia category B, saying, look, you have to have express entry profile, you have to have your occupation in one of skilled categories, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, you name it, right? And whenever we open doors, we would allow you to apply, but you have to be, and you have to have this work experience in one of those categories, right? Because these are the priority occupations. So how do we usually determine them? We're looking at the labor market, right? What is the difference between the number of successful applicants or prospective applicants, right? And what is the demand on the labor market? If there is a gap, well, this occupation might be in demand, and we would put it in the in-demand list. There are, of course, different stories, like, for example, with Saskatchewan, with Alberta, when they're saying, look, there is a list of occupations which is in demand, but at the same time, we would rather list those which are not in demand, right? Those we're not considering at all. And those occupations would stand no chance. Well, however, this list is changing as well. Now, there are categories when they're saying, like, look, skilled workers, right? Those people who are already employed in those provinces. When we just began this masterclass, you had a short video about this owner-operator, one of the ways, right? Now, another option, say, you came to study in Canada, you graduated from a university or a college, and then essentially you find yourself a job in one of the provinces, right, in a skilled category. And if you do not still have enough points in express entry to immigrate, you could consider yourself applying for a skilled category in one of the provincial nominee programs. And of course, entrepreneurs. So many provinces, they do have their own entrepreneur streams. I still believe that these entrepreneur streams are right now kind of lagging behind owner operators, simply because owner operator is working much faster. But if you're considering to apply for one of the entrepreneur streams, well, maybe it's a good idea to look at all of the provinces and study market in there, study what provinces are requiring, because that's one of the ways to immigrate with provincial support. Now, what happens with provinces? Where this actually story with the provincial immigration is coming from is essentially the fact that statistically, probably around 90% of immigrants are targeting to come to 3 metropolitan areas, right? They're targeting to come to Toronto, to Vancouver, to Montreal, right? So it's a big 3, and people are looking to come in there, right? The rest would probably go to Calgary, Edmonton, whatever you name it, right? And a tiny portion of people would consider going to Winnipeg, to consider going somewhere in Saskatchewan or to Atlantic, right? So if you're immigrating as a federal skilled worker applicant, you would probably find yourself way better in Toronto or in Vancouver, or who knows, maybe you would decide to later on relocate to Montreal. But the point is, you're trying to stay in one of those large metropolitan areas because that's where jobs are, that's where businesses are, that's where your future customers are, right? And when it comes down to provincial immigration, right, provinces want to make sure that you would come and start living in underpopulated territories, right? You would start living where you would contribute to the success of the provinces. The pain in the back for many provinces, that's what you see on the screen right now, right? That is the complex task of actually making sure that you would stay. See, Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it actually grants this unconditional right to any citizen, and of course to any permanent resident of Canada, to move freely inside the country and settle anywhere he or she wants. And provinces know about it. In fact, they know that you know. In other words, hey, I'm immigrating to Manitoba. I would promise to Manitoba that I would stay there till the end of my days, despite freaking cold and so on, right? Now, as soon as I become a permanent resident of Canada, and that happens when I land in Canada, right? That may happen at Pearson Airport. That could happen at Pierre Trudeau Airport in Montreal, right? That's where I have my landing procedure done, right? And I become a permanent resident of Canada. Well, all I have to do is just to reach Manitoba, exit the airport in Winnipeg, for example, look around, say, well, thank you so much, I'm going to Vancouver. Am I in my full right to do so? In fact, yes, right? They're not able to stop you. They're not able to actually impose any legal repercussions on you, despite the fact that they would ask you to sign an undertaking that you would stay in the province for X number of years. I said it multiple times on YouTube, guys, nobody would be able to punish you. Nobody would be able to force you to stay in the province if you don't want to, right? You're not allowed to plan it in advance. Well, that's not certainly recommended. But if you came in and you really don't like it in there, you could go anywhere you want. And again, provinces know that you know. That is why they create this rules where they want to see that at the end of the day, you have a sort of connection. You are established with the province, right? That you stand a chance to actually stay in the province. Because afterwards, after you came in, nobody would be able to stop you. How they can make sure of this? Well, statistically, if you have your previous experience of studying in the province, if you have your previous experience of working in the province, well, chances are you would actually stay. Now, if you got close relatives in the province, if you got very close friends in the province, again, chances are you would stay. How Manitoba, for example, looks at it, right? Well, when it comes down to close relatives, it's quite understandable. But when it comes down to friends, right, they're required to help you with a settlement plan. How would you come, right? How you would try to stay and how your friends will try to show you around, right? And essentially help you to establish yourself. Where's the grocery store, right? How would you send your kids to school? Will your friends be willing to assist you with information and so on and support you, introduce you to a local community or not? So the whole reason behind this story with friends is essentially to make sure that you would have this needed support. Otherwise, again, look, you would look around, say, hey, it's all wonderful, right? Population of Winnipeg is around 1 million people, but you know what? Just scratching my back. Why won't I go to Toronto? Toronto itself is, with metropolitan area, is over 5 million people. I would rather go there. My chances of finding a job at least 5 times more, right? and 5 times better than going forward for Winnipeg, for example, right? So essentially, provinces want to make sure that you would have this cushion of support, right? That safety cushion, which would be given to you by relatives, by friends, or by the fact that you studied or worked in the province, right? You lived in the province before, maybe because I don't know, your spouse has studied in here, you worked here before, you were here as a temporary resident for quite a while. So whatever it is, connecting you with the province could help you essentially to establish yourself, right? That's what provinces are interested in. Now, mistakes many applicants are making with understanding how it works and what it works, so what not to do, what to do with respect to looking at provincial support is 3 categories or 3 pillars, if you will. Now, first one, when it comes down to expression of interest, and people actually mix it up and ask me all the time, like, can I, in fact, apply for multiple provinces at the same time? The question is not entirely correct. Can I express my interest in applying for multiple provinces? Solid and adamant yes. So I can express my interest to apply for multiple provinces. I could create my express entry profile and I could send my application or expression of interest in this sense to Prince Edward Island. I could go to Saskatchewan Oasis, right? Looking at the recent selection draw, Saskatchewan, 68 points. Great. I mean, it's amazing, right? We're receiving invitations for our clients right now. I mean, for the last couple of weeks, that's been crazy because essentially we've been keeping ourselves busy applying them. And as of now, right, Saskatchewan is quite lucrative. Can I express my interest in going for Saskatchewan? 100% yes. It's not an application yet, right? I do have a school buddy who is living in Winnipeg. Could I essentially express my interest in going to Manitoba? 100% yes, right? What I cannot do is I cannot apply for multiple provinces. So say, well, tomorrow I'm receiving an invitation to apply for Ontario, right? Ontario says, hey, by the way, you speak French as well. Let's go for Francophone Extreme. Here is your invitation. Would you like to accept it or not? The moment you say yes, I would like to accept it. Of course, you're saying yes, right? You have to cancel your expression of interest for all other provinces, right? And God forbid you do not have to apply for other provinces at the same time, right? If you have applied for something before that, right, like just make sure that you cancel your application. We actually had it with one of our clients when we had application for, I think it was New Brunswick, and that was an invitation for Ontario. He accepted that invitation for Ontario as well, started preparing the documents, and then came to us like, hey, can I be your client? But by the way, here's the deal. I'm applying for New Brunswick, already submitted my application, but I want to go to Ontario. Luckily, New Brunswick officers were quite understandable. We said, look, I'm sorry, we got to withdraw the application without negative consequences for us. We're terribly sorry, but then explained everything to Ontario, just making sure that we're not hiding anything. Look, dear Ontario, we tried to apply for New Brunswick. Everything was fine. We just voluntarily withdrew this application, and that's what happened. So Ontario was totally okay with this. The guy and his family are successfully living in Canada, in Ontario right now. But the point is, like, do not apply for multiple provinces at the same time. Express your interest, yes. Application, only one province, right? The one which is choosing you, go for it. And of course, make sure that your application, your province of your destination, and whatever you're saying to federal authorities, they correspond to each other, right? So don't go for the application, don't go for the session of New Brunswick, right? When your own province of your destination and only province of your destination in express entry is Saskatchewan. Just make sure that you do yourself a favor, that you mention the right province in there. Well, don't forget that in fact in express entry you do have a chance to actually mention all of the provinces except for Quebec, right? So you could do that. That is your legal right, and in fact you could technically express your interest for multiple provinces, but that would secure you from this mistake where people are saying like, look, in my express entry application I got one story, in provincial application I got another one. I'm promising to Alberta I would go to Alberta. In fact, I'm not going to, right? Under federal program, I'm saying something else to federal authorities. So just make sure that you don't make that mistake. Oh, just notice that I'm not probably somewhere in the middle. This, yeah, here we go. Should see me a bit better this way. My apologies. Now, going for establishment of connections with the province, right? When it comes down to particulars, because I see your questions in here, right? How it would work and what to do, how to apply for one or another province, we would discuss it in question and answer section. What I want to do right now is just to give you a rough idea how it works in large chunks, right? Because the story is this establishments of connections, they work from time to time for all of the provinces, and provinces, they change their rules fairly often depending on what's happening on the labor market, and they're trying to reflect on the situation with COVID-19 as well. Now, speaking about establishment and connection with the province, right, we have a chance to go for an online job fairs. Remember on the channel, we spoke before about those job fairs. I was mentioning Intech Career Fair. We were talking about Manitoba Career Fair in May. We were talking about that career fair. I don't remember the name, honestly, which took place in July, right? We were talking about those Intech, sub-Intech small events which were taking place in Intech portal for specific employers throughout this summer. So making sure that at the end of the day, right, we will be able to go forward and look at the application, right, and try to establish yourself a connection with employer, right, in various provinces, and making sure that we would try to get ourselves a job offer in a particular province. And we're not talking here about Atlantic, we're not talking here about rural pilot, that's separate stories. Essentially, that's having a broader picture at all of the provinces right now. Informational sessions and recruitment events. So I just want to make sure that we understand the difference between these two. When it comes down to recruitment events, right, since we're talking about job fairs, so recruitment events is essentially the same story, but that is an offline, right? One of the examples of those recruitment sessions would be New Brunswick sessions, that would be Nova Scotia sessions, that would be Manitoba sessions, which took place before Corona, of course, and hopefully, I mean, this pandemic would pass sooner than later. But essentially, this recruitment events were taking place around the globe where employers were coming in. The whole purpose of those recruitment events is very understandable. That's to make sure that employers would have a word with you, that employers would have a chance to actually talk to you directly, and if you're lucky enough, if your qualifications meet their requirements, you would stand a solid chance to actually get yourself a job offer and then immigrate through one of the provincial programs. Again, I'm not talking here about Atlantic specifically. If you remember what happened with Nova Scotia recruitment events, none of them were for Atlantic. All of them were specifically targeting Nova Scotia provincial nominee program, because at that time it was working better, it was working faster, it was way more understandable for officers in there. So many employers were saying, look, if you're targeting Atlantic, no, that's not what we're doing right now. We're looking forward to take you for Nova Scotia PNP, which is not a bad sign anyways, right? It's one of the best options to go and come to Canada and successfully immigrate here. Now, another story is informational sessions. Sometimes people mix it up. These two have to stand apart from each other. So when it comes down to an informational session, example would be New Brunswick informational session. That's where officers are playing the major role. So essentially, officers are coming in and they're talking to you, they're delivering you a presentation, they tell you about the province. If we started talking about New Brunswick, well, let's talk about it, right? So officers are on the stage, they give you a presentation of New Brunswick, they tell you how wonderful it is to live there, as if you didn't know that before, right? They answer your questions, address your concerns on living in the province, and then one of the events I could recall was a couple years ago, for example, when you have your Express Entry profile, when you have a copy of your IELTS test, right? When you have your education credentials assessment copy, you got your CV ready, you got your references ready, officers could give you a chance to apply for a provincial program right in there during the event. Another option is how New Brunswick decided to play it later on, is saying, hey, thank you for participation, you could go home now. It's a bit disappointing, but the point here is that afterwards you're granted the right for 2 years after the event to apply for New Brunswick provincial nominee program when New Brunswick is starting to take people. Now, New Brunswick is quite interesting, was saying that, you know what, in fact, participation in our informational session would not be considered a connection with the province. Well, definitely it is not a connection with the province. It is your chance to apply for New Brunswick provincial nominee program when it opens for those who participated in the session. I think it was last February, or this February rather, when New Brunswick said that, look, here's the list of occupations, including IT specialists. those of you who took place or who participated in one of the sessions for the last 2 years, please mention it in the form and apply. We will check out if you indeed have participated. We will check out information in our database. If that's the fact, welcome. We will consider your application. Was it worth actually going for an event? 100% yes, right? It's sort of an unexpected gift for you to get yourself 600 points and successfully pass through express entry. Now, studies in the provinces or work in the province is kind of an obvious option. Well, considering what's going on right now, this online sessions, right, and how to go through an online session, online studies, I mean, it's quite vague, I would say. Well, I understand all the efforts of our federal authorities to deal with COVID, to make sure that, you know, we would prevent the spread of corona in Canada, but all in all, I would love to see how situation develops further on with studies. It's certainly a good backup plan. It's certainly a good option to establish yourself a connection with Canada, but make sure that you would have this clear pathway in the next few months before actually applying for studies. Right now, I got this sort of a question mark in my head because I'm not entirely sure that studies these days applying for January intake would be the right option. Not trying to talk you out of this. It's just, again, like kind of question mark in my head because I see what's going on with this online and where it goes to. Not really sure it's a good option. And exploratory visits, right? Exploratory visits, it's a separate story. It's like a sort of an opposite to informational session. That's when you are coming to the province, right? The province is inviting you. And one of the examples of those exploratory visits to Manitoba. Manitoba was inviting applicants, and you do not necessarily have to have specific connections with the community in Manitoba. You do not necessarily have to have a specific connection with somebody in Manitoba. Manitoba sometimes invites you and says, hey, by the way, those of you who are looking to come, for exploratory visits, right? What you could do is to write us an email explaining why you believe that you should be settled in Manitoba, how prepared you are, right? What connects you in Manitoba. And if this explanation is deemed sufficient, we might actually invite you to participate, to come, right? You would have to get yourself a temporary visa unless you're from the country which is exempt from temporary visa requirements. Then you would get yourself electronic travel authorization. Welcome to Manitoba. Come in here, fly to Winnipeg, right? Get yourself, explore how it is. And then a few days after, right, you would have an interview with one of Manitoba's provincial officers, and they would decide if they believe that everything's fine with you, they will give you a chance to apply for provincial nomination. Well, that is also an establishment of connection. Again, I'm not talking about establishing relatives because I barely believe how you could establish those relatives or find in friends. We spoke about it before. But these are the options which you could monitor yourself, or if you want, we can do it for you. And essentially just have this connection with the province, which would allow you to shift focus, right, from applying directly, from retaking your IELTS, polishing your French, or going and hunting for an employer in Atlantic or in rural pilot. Well, it's still doable, right? What I want to do is just to sort of give you this embroadened vision where you could see what else could be done in terms of your application, how else you could apply, how else you could go to, right, and go forward with this connection with the provinces. Now, just to sort of promo from our side, right? We do have and believe that these webinars, this live stream events, they are targeted for you. They are done for you. They're prepared specially for you so that you would understand better immigration pathways. We prepare them absolutely free of charge. We make sure that we answer your questions, we address all of your concerns, and we educate you on legal pathways and options of immigration to Canada, right? We will be doing them on a regular basis. We in fact are doing them on a regular basis so that you would understand and learn how immigration to Canada works, what kind of everlasting and ever-changing rules are in place by the time we conduct those webinars and live events. And we want to make sure that we will deliver those latest news to you. So feel free to subscribe. Again, no obligations. They're all free of charge, and we're looking forward to do them in the nearest future. Now, for the free assessment, if you're looking for us to look at your pathway, your immigration story, how to do this with respect to provincial programs, federal programs, what to do with the business immigration study, is it a good option or is it not? cactv.ca/go. You could fill up your information in there, your first, last name, email address, and one of our specialists will be in contact with you and looking deeper into your profile. Now, here's what I would love to do, because right now is the time for us to answer your questions, right? And make sure that we would be able to talk about you and you only. But before that, let me just sip a bit of my tea for a couple seconds. I will just put back this owner-operator quick presentation, refresh myself very quickly and go back and make sure that I would be able to establish this private connection with you where we are able to talk. You would see me more. I would read what you're asking on the slides, in chat, and would try to essentially address your questions and concerns. Let me just go
back. The Canadian Immigration Channel introduces the owner-operator pathway of immigrating to Canada. Watch this short video to learn about the benefits of the owner-operator immigration. Immigrating to Canada as an owner-operator is a way of creating a workplace in Canada for yourself. First, you create your own Canadian company. In many cases, you don't even have to come to Canada to become a company owner. Set up a business bank account, register with Canadian tax authorities, create a website, and prepare the infrastructure for a successful start. Now it's time to apply for a work permit and come to Canada to start working in your own company. People working legally in Canada, including yourself, enjoy extra benefits in dozens of immigration programs. If you speak English or French, have experience in running a business or working as a freelancer, possess sufficient funds to start a new business, you meet the 3 principal requirements to start the immigration process to Canada as an owner-operator. Step 1. Create your own corporation in Canada without leaving home. Rest assured, our specialists will make this process comfortable for you. Step 2. Come and get employed from your very first day in Canada. Step 3. Now when you have a job in a Canadian company and the valuable Canadian work experience, choose one of many immigration programs available to apply for permanent residence. Canadian immigration system is changing. Don't wait until it is too late. Start now by saying.
All right, I'm back to you. You should be able to see me right now. Let's just check out that everything works fine. Yeah, you can see me. It should be working. So from time to time, as I said, I would have this sneak peek to your questions, and would try to address those questions right away. Can I get PNP nomination without express entry profile? That is actually a great question, and many applicants were asking me if express entry profile is mandatory for it. In fact, no, it's not mandatory. There are at least, let's just talk about at least a couple of programs where you could apply without express entry profile. You could technically create your profile in Saskatchewan Oasis without having express entry profile. You could create a profile in Manitoba, for example, without express entry. If you have a job offer, you could apply for British Columbia provincial nominee program on paper. You do not necessarily have to have express entry profile, right? So when I'm saying on paper, not necessarily applying to British Columbia on paper, right? It's like after approval from British Columbia, you could apply to federal authorities on paper, so it's still doable. And these are just a few examples on how it may work for you if you, for whatever reason, don't want to create express entry profile or can't create express entry profile right now. One of the examples why you might not be able to do this, say for example, your academic institution is not accredited in Canada, right? WS is telling you, look, it's not going to work. Whatever organization tells you it's not going to work. You tried it through IQS, it didn't work. You tried it through ICAS. This guy said, lost your diploma. I'm just giving you the very grim situation. And you're so sick of this, you're looking to apply for PNP. And that might be that might actually work for you. Tell something about Caregiver Pilot. Well, Caregiver Pilot is one of the pilots which exists, which could allow you to immigrate to Canada, provided that you, in fact, are a caregiver or you're taking care of elderly people or people with disabilities. But since it has nothing to do with provincial nominee programs, and I want to make sure that I would address questions of those of you who are looking forward to have answers for the specific subject of this masterclass, we will stay tuned on it. Those of you who are looking to have questions answered on study visas, on business immigration, and so on, look, feel free to first, of course, send us an email, fill up the assessment profile, and at the same time, like, look, we're mostly welcoming you to actually leave us a feedback on the webinar. If you're looking to have the next one dedicated to a specific subject, just drop us a line at any time. We're reading those feedbacks, we're reading your comments, and are trying to take them into consideration. That's how we actually chose the subject of this particular live event. Our pilot programs waiting for borders to open before they start rolling out, or they currently focusing on people already in the region? Well, pilot programs, again, not really the subject of this live event, but when it comes down to rural pilot, when it comes down to Atlantic, by, I would say, 90% as of now, particularly this second, they're looking for those who are either already in Canada or who could come to Canada fairly soon. Those who are outside of the country, who would need a visa for it, probably would have to wait a little bit. Situation with pandemic is getting better. We're looking at the story and we're seeking that, in fact, provinces are starting to invite people more often. Federal authorities are starting to carefully and cautiously studying those federal skilled worker draws. So it looks like we are on the right pathway. We're still in the woods, of course, don't be mistaken, but it seems that we're getting out of there slowly but steadily. How could you contact us for whatever program? Doesn't really matter. cactv.ca/go. It was on the screen. I would make sure that I would return back to that screen as well. Is labor market complicated for someone not in tech? Engineering, my field is advertisement and film production. Well, again, when it comes to labor market, it really depends on how provinces react to this. So say, not necessarily it would be an IT specialist. You may potentially find yourself working in film industry in British Columbia or in Ontario and get yourself an employer in there as well, right? So Toronto Film Festival is one of the largest film festivals in North America, right, in the world, and probably that's one of the options to apply if you're a seasoned professional. Besides, you might actually consider yourself a career and applying for self-employed immigration, but that's a story for individual consultation if you would like to. Can I start cannabis company in Canada outside of the country? I don't really think so. You have to have a license, and probably you would actually have to have Canadian directors, and you would probably have to be incorporated in Canada for it. So I don't really think that outside of Canada you would be able to do this. When it comes down to licensing, every province has their own requirements, but I've never heard this licensing or licenses being distributed to outsiders, right? There might be companies with U.S. capital, there might be companies with outside capital, but these companies are still Canadian. You have 15 years of experience and your job code is 2175. Good. Well, congrats. But that's not enough to actually understand your profile further. So if you'd like us to assess it, either elaborate on it or cactv.ca/go, and we'll look further into this. You have a Canadian certification from microplate, okay, economy and interested to immigrate. Where do you start for all of the possible different ways? cactv.ca/go. Again, I would leave that link on the slide when we end up this question and answer section. So whoever wants to apply, or you could always send us a direct email. But if you'd like us to assess the profile, feel free to drop us a line. Yeah, absolutely. We'll just go through this. How could you prove that you're going to leave the country when your work permit expires? Well, it's not a difficult question, I believe, David. Well, it comes down to the story applicable to all temporary visas, right? So what connects you with a home country, right? Do you have a family back at home? Do you have a stable job back at home? How is your country working? I mean, it's not really a question to you, but it's a question to overall labor market in your home country, right? Say if it's Venezuela and the country collapses, right? It's hard to believe that you would actually return back home. But I mean, even in Venezuela, you might have a very good job prospects depending on who you are, how you work, how much you're making, what your family is. Do you have your property, real estate property in your home country, right? So all these factors might contribute to the fact to prove to the officers that when your work permit expires, you still stand a very solid chance to actually return back home. You're a social worker. What are your chances to apply from outside of Canada? might be okay depending on which province we're looking at. Again, it's not enough for me to grasp an idea like what else behind this social worker is in there. How old are you? What are your language test results, right? What is your education credentials assessment result? Like, we have to look at the complete picture in order to try to answer this question. Please help me to understand the occupation. It's hard to say, Mohammed, if I read your name carefully, because this screen is a bit far from me. But send us an email. We'll try to look into your profile and see if we would be able to elaborate based on your work experience, based on your job duties, which NFC code it would contribute to. Again, I think I answered the question about 13 years of experience. What is the biggest factor to get LMIA in owner-operator pathway? For an owner-operator pathway, it's all about your previous business experience or management experience and about what you could put on the table for Canada, right? You have experience running a textile manufacturing company, right? And you're looking to open a garment factory in Canada. You could align these two together. You could demonstrate to officers that the market exists, that in fact your company is seeking to hire people in Canada, right? Create additional jobs. That is your success factor. You're 43 years old and have a point of 6. Again, not enough. We still need to know a bit more if you'd like to. I mean, feel free to drop us a line. We'll look into your profile and we'll see how it will work for you. Can you apply for postgraduate work permit to a province, work in another province, and apply for provincial program? Graduated from Quebec, found a job to Toronto, apply for Ontario. That's a great question, actually. Now, this example is probably like 10 out of 10. So here's the deal. Well, of course, Quebec has different requirements, different policies, and Quebec, as we've stated before, stands absolutely differently. But there is the clause in law which says that, in fact, if you have received your postgraduate work permit in Quebec, but you are not looking to live in Quebec, right? You may apply for immigration and you may apply for federal immigration. In fact, so in your example, you received your postgraduate work permit. It's valid for all Canada. There's no limitation just because it's valid only for Quebec or only for Ontario. So your postgraduate work permit would allow you to seek for the job anywhere in Canada. And if you found something in Toronto, and if you're looking to apply for an Ontario provincial nominee program, and in fact you meet all of the requirements, mostly welcome to do so. I would in fact strongly recommend you to do so. What about job fairs? Links. Good question. For Intech Career Fair, I would refer you to our previous videos. For all other job fairs, guys, understand one thing. What practice tells us is that these job fairs, they sometimes pop up out of nowhere and disappear to nowhere, except maybe for an Intech Career Fair. So we try to post as many of them as possible on our channel, and I would recommend you to keep an eye on it, simply because when it comes down to these job fairs, remember the one which took place in July, those of you who participated, right? We announced it, we looked at the website, which was saying, look, it's gonna take place, I think it was 24th of July. Don't catch me on numbers in here. I don't remember the exact date, but that was something close to the story. So it was like, hey, it's gonna be 24th of July. All right, enough time. Now, by the time we post a video, it says, hey, it's gonna be 18th of July. All right, let it be so, right? We post in a video, next day they change the date and they're saying, hey, by the way, it's gonna be 9th of July, right? So we have to record it again, post it again, saying, hey, make sure that you participate tomorrow, because otherwise you would miss that opportunity, right? How crazy is that? Well, I mean, it's a question to those who are organizing this event, but point is, this event popped out of nowhere, disappeared to nowhere. I know many of you who participated still had this question mark, why the hell it was organized so poorly. Well, it happens sometimes, right? So if there are those who are pre-populated, such as Destination Canada, for example, we will post a video soon about the update for Destination Canada for this winter for Paris and Brussels. Now, those which are not populated, those which are not there or have not been there for quite a number of years, we are posting them whenever we find them, right? They are coming up more often than not nowadays because of this COVID, and they're trying to attract more applicants from abroad as well. Can you submit express entry before WES ECA completed? Well, not necessarily has to be WES. So remind you, just there are other assessment organizations, but you cannot finalize your express entry profile before you have your education credentials assessment certificate, because it would ask you for your certificate number. Okay, and you will not be able to change it just that easy afterwards. So make sure that you have this valid certificate number by the time you're applying. Yeah, ECA is mandatory for creating an express entry profile. Somebody has asked this question for me. Can I go with your pet for a study visa? You can. Well, it depends on what kind of pet it is, but we do have experience immigrating with our clients with the spider, with the snake, with the all breeds of dogs and cats. So if you got questions on specific pets, that's a separate discussion, of course, but I believe I will have a chance to share all of the stories and how it works. Yeah, so even with spiders. Your NOC is accounts technician and CRS 413. Any chances to get nomination and from which province? Well, it's hard to predict which province would be playing its role tomorrow, day after tomorrow, and how exactly it would work, right? It's sort of looking at the crystal ball. But I would say that even retrospectively for 13 and 11 for bookkeepers, I would probably keep an eye on Alberta, despite the fact that Alberta right now, sometimes it's inviting applicants, but they're not processing them, they're putting them on hold. Alberta has been taking bookkeepers. I think we mentioned it in one of our videos when we listed out those NOC codes which were specifically in demand in Alberta. So yes, I would look at Alberta. I would definitely look at New Brunswick in their sessions, because New Brunswick was taking bookkeepers. In fact, they were having those informational sessions for bookkeepers before, so it makes sense to go there as well. If you come to a province as a visitor, how can you meet with the provincial officer for information? It's not always possible to meet those provincial officers when you come as a visitor, unless you have your meeting with officers scheduled. So the fact that you just came in, like it worked with Manitoba several times before, it's not going to work these days, specifically during COVID, right? Officers are either not meeting you at all, or they're meeting you remotely over Skype. So I would probably say that just going to a province as a visitor might work for your benefit for the future, when, for example, proving to officers that in fact this province of your destination is the one you're targeting specifically, and they should give you an invitation to apply. Here's one of the examples. Previous destination Canada, Manitoba officer sitting in there. I don't want to point fingers, right? She knows her name. She's sitting there, not very polite with applicants, right? Sort of, rather driving them off from Manitoba instead of attracting. But one of my applicants actually got invitation to apply, pushing it through by the fact that, look, I was in Manitoba twice, I wanted to go there, I studied here, I got my settlement plan printed in here, I prepared all of the papers, I do my homework, I got everything ready in here, and I'm ready to convince you that Manitoba is the place I'm going to. Would you please give me 5 minutes to explain myself? Worked marvelously, right? You should have seen her face. And in fact, he got an invitation to apply. He's been nominated and is successful in Manitoba already. So that could work as well. But in fact, just going to a province on a temporary visa is not usually the best solution to establish your connection with officers. How short-term courses? Is there any age restriction? I'm not really sure I understand the question correctly. Dennis, sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly. And if I understand the question right, are you asking about short-term study courses in Canada? Well, when we're talking about anything shorter than 6 months, well, it would not help you out apart from just the fact that you come to Canada. It might be a reason for you to get a visa, but afterwards you gotta do something more serious. Either get yourself a job offer and then change your status for work permit, or in fact, apply for academic studies, which would be over a year, academic at least year long or more. So just come in for temporary visa, come in for temporary short courses might not be the best option. Again, it all highly depends on your particular circumstances, so we got to look into the matter deeply. Can you apply for an owner-operator program with an online business? You can, provided that you could explain why you need to have this physical presence in Canada, why your company has to be in Canada. It might be an online company, but in fact, right, you want to have a warehouse, right, to ship goods to the US from Canada. Could work well. Thank you very much. Welcome. You have 4 years experience in 0124. I've already created Express Entry profile for 38. What are my chances for PNP, Ontario, immigrant? Might be Ontario. Hard to say because again, like I don't remember all NOC codes in my head, right? And don't have the statistics all the time. If you'd like to, just drop us a line. I will look into this and we'll see again retrospectively which provinces were taking applicants, and yeah, maybe there is a way to shape your profile specifically for one or another province with respect to your previous experience and make it more attractive for them. If you take course less than 1 year, can you get an open work visa for 3 years? No, you cannot. Like, I mean, how is that even possible? Rule of thumb is you're studying for 1 year, at least for one academic year, you get yourself 1 year of work permit. You study for 2 or more years, you get yourself 3 years of work permit, right? It might be 2 separate programs, 1 year each, but again, studying for less than a year, less than 1 academic year, and then getting yourself 3 years of work permit is gonna be a miracle, right? So no, it's not gonna happen probably. Where's your email address for questions, clarification? We would have it in here, and of course we always have it in every single video of ours, right? It's everywhere. If you study for an accelerate program for 4 semesters with no gaps, how long my postgraduate work permit is going to be? That's a question to an academic institution because it would depend on how long would be that semester, and it would depend on what kind of program it is. So can't answer it without knowing more details. When you fill up the field of study in Express Entry, how important is it? Because my field is not in the list, but is the close to computer and information technician. It's not important at all. In fact, so say, even if you choose something completely out of the blue and you would say this is, I don't know, the industry is law, right? And in fact you were studying informatics or something, computer science, as would not have any negative impact on your application. Might show that you were not doing your due diligence correctly, but at the end of the day, I've never heard anybody being penalized for it. You have thanks for hosting this forum. Do rules appear more favorable for American to obtain employment in Canada under NAFTA or newly updated? Okay. If you would rephrase your question, I'm not really sure that I would understand it correctly. Okay. Hard to say. So gotta look into your question once again. If you would like to rephrase it somehow so that I would understand it, because I'm not really sure. Are you comparing USMCA versus NAFTA, or what are you exactly comparing to, right? So I do understand the first part of your question, but not sure about the second one. Your husband and I are applying together. Does it make a difference who the primary applicant is? Well, will the points differ? It's hard for me to say because I don't know your profile. Will your points differ depending on who is the principal applicant? Because if you're completely equal to each other in terms of your age, your language abilities, and your education, it doesn't really matter. But why I would recommend you to have 2 Express Entry profiles, so not either or, but to have both Express Entry profiles, because if you do not have enough points in Express Entry, you gotta start targeting provincial nominee programs, right? You gotta start looking for other opportunities beyond Express Entry, and that's where your profiles and your background history actually plays a role. I'm an accountant, I'm an IT technician, right? And well, it doesn't mean that the guy is in IT and the lady is in accounting, right? And the guy has more chances and she has less. In fact, it might be quite the opposite. And that's why I would recommend you to have 2 profiles. You could legally do so. You could legally create 2 Express Entry profiles. Nobody would charge you for that. So make sure that you have you may have actually 2 Express Entry profiles, so that's perfectly fine. Now we're getting very, very close to the completion. I really appreciate you. I can't believe every single time that you are able to sit with me for 1 hour to ask those questions, to address them, to make sure that we have this communication with each other. I really appreciate it. You have no idea how empowering it is. And in fact, let me just go back to the story. I promised you that, let me just do it this way, that I would switch here, cictv.ca/go, if you want us to look into your profile and help you assess your chances and look into your chances deeper, further and how to assist you with your immigration pathway. Now, as I said, in all our videos, we have our direct contact information if you would like to send us an email, if you would like to clarify something. And for all of our further webinars, live events, for all of our master classes on immigration to Canada, they're always conducted free of charge. And everything we would do here is we're doing it for educational purposes, to let you know how you could immigrate to Canada, how you could build your immigration pathway and increase your chances of actually coming to our country. Now, on this note, I would probably wrap it up. We've been for an hour together. Really appreciate it. I sincerely thank you for all of your questions, and that was quite wonderful for being with you. We'll meet next time. As we said, these events are run on a regular basis. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for coming in, for asking those questions. And I'm terribly sorry if I wasn't able to answer one of yours. Feel free to come next time, right? And we will be able to see you in about a few weeks. Stay tuned with us. Stay safe and healthy. That's really important nowadays. And yeah, we'll see you in Canada.